early morning, can't control it. Fired up and counting every minute. Hands are shaking, eyes are burning. The time has come, yeah, this is not a warning. The week was just so long, we had to let it go. Our problems disappeared, we're not tied up anymore. The weekend is here. Sunday calls, we are sick and tired of it. Up and down, can you feel it?
Hey everybody, and welcome to the Kurt Johansson Show, formerly known as Kurt's Angle Podcast. If you didn't see all the announcements over social media, the show's been rebranded. Kurt's Angle is still going to be a segment moving forward, but we're here with the Kurt Johansson Show. Make sure you head over to @Kurt Johansson Show to see all the updates if you didn't see them. Really excited to be working with Fierce Females moving forward as an interviewer and a presenter doing their Fierce Females Focus show. So kickstarting the Kurt Johansson Show, I'm going to be using 4 interviews that I recorded and didn't release under the Kurt's Angle name. These were recorded also before the Speaking Out movement, which saw so many brave people come forward about the horrible experiences they've had within the wrestling industry, and hopefully that movement is going to change professional wrestling forever. Like, there's no space for it. So if any of these topics that we do discuss as well, I hope nobody's affected by these, but hopefully you can enjoy these 4 interviews, one with Emily Hayden, Joel Redman, Adrian Gomez from MKW in China, and Joey Seven. I would like to welcome you to my interview with the owner of Middle Kingdom Wrestling, MKW in China. We discussed the Chinese professional wrestling scene and how he got started as an American living in China, creating Middle Kingdom Wrestling, one of the best companies in Asia at the moment. Everybody, enjoy my interview with Adrian Gomez.
Thank you for having me, Kurt.
No, I'm really excited about this. From everybody that I've spoken to, whether it's Shuka or Ho Ho Lun, they've both sang the praises of MKW. So really looking forward to learn more about MKW and a bit more about yourself as a promoter, really.
Okay, great.
So just to get things kick-started, like, what made you realise you wanted to be within the professional wrestling industry? Like, what was your first memory as a fan, and when you knew, I want to get into the industry some way or the other?
I became a wrestling fan probably when I first got really hooked was when the WCW game came out on Nintendo 64. I think it was a world tour, WCW NWO World Tour on Nintendo 64. And that came out, I guess I was about maybe grade 4. So I was around 9 years old. And at that time, I wanted to see these characters in the video game in real life. So actually, I didn't even know what time wrestling was on. But after playing this game for so long, I played it for like a few months, playing as Hogan, playing as Sting, playing as Kevin Nash. And then when I turn on the TV and there they are, like, it was a big deal to me to see these game characters in, as I guess, in their real form. So I started watching wrestling in early 1998, mostly with WCW.
Okay, so
and then
yeah,
and then from there would be you could say a wrestling obsession built from that.
Yeah, I can imagine. So as you've been growing through, and obviously the obsession's gone from you being as a child, going into adult life like most of us, when was it when you thought, I wouldn't mind being involved in wrestling? And did you look at potentially getting in the ring and start training, or was it always, I want to be a promoter?
Well, I guess it was around when I was around 20 years old, in mid college years, when I started looking into getting more involved in local wrestling scene. Now, I would go at this point in my age. I was actually started getting really hooked on like independent wrestling, in particular like Ring of Honor, CZW. I was actually a huge CZW fan. Actually, I was really into the
Okay.
hardcore stuff and trying to see. You know, I would visit local wrestling shows, and through going as a regular, and seeing how small these local wrestling operations are, it was kind of easy to observe. Like, okay, there's the promoter, there's that's one of the wrestlers, but you can also see he's kind of like agenting the matches. If you go there a little bit early, you can see them talking, hanging out, and I wanted to get more into this world because really it was not just the wrestling matches that were entertaining me. It was also going to wrestling shows and seeing the way they work and seeing, who's the sound guy or who set up the ring and um, and really it just manifested into, well, I got to get into this as much as I can. I would credit ACW, Anarchy Championship Wrestling in San Antonio, Texas, as being one of the. They've been really kind. They were really kind to me as a young kid, letting me go there a bit early and do anything that they would allow me to do on that night to help out
Yeah.
and communicate and hang out a bit with the wrestlers. So that was really a stepping stone, a huge stepping stone. I would say it was ACW allowing me to be used as a handy guy for anything I could do on the day of the show.
Okay, so obviously helping out at ACW and seeing like a lot more behind the scenes than just a regular fan, you start getting involved. And when was it that you moved from America to China?
Sure. Now, I didn't move to China with the intent to be a wrestling promoter.
Yeah.
During that, when I decided to move to China, I was also very interested in just moving to a new country and teaching English. I was a huge fan of a television personality named Anthony Bourdain, who passed away a few years ago. And through reading his books and just getting involved in and getting so close to, like, I was almost trying to mimic like his life, his food culture life, the way he looked at things. I read his books very clearly, very intently, and it's to the point where I watched an episode of Anthony Bourdain's travel show, and he was in one of the cities that he was in. I decided to say he had such a good time in that city.
Yeah.
Where I said, I want to move there because Anthony Bourdain had a good time. And actually, that's where I live now.
Wow. So how long have you been in China for now then?
10 years now.
And so you've gone there as like a big avid wrestling fan. You've been, again, helping ACW behind the scenes. What, if any, was the wrestling scene like in China? Was there any companies when you first went across there?
Well, I did come to China as a huge wrestling fan, so I didn't leave my wrestling fandom behind.
Yeah.
Friends I made, people that I knew here in China, I would maybe try to introduce them a little bit to wrestling, talk a little bit about wrestling, and that built up for about maybe around about 5 years. So about 5 years of this idea kind of floating in my head where I'm like, there is no wrestling. Because to answer the question, what you said before, what was the wrestling scene like? It was quite apparent to me that there wasn't any wrestling. So as a wrestling fan, I thought, you know what? There seems to be a market open. And on top of that, I would use some of my time in classrooms when I was working in a university as a teacher to kind of sample the students on, what do you guys think about wrestling? Do you know wrestling? Do you know what WWE is? Have you heard of this? And really, year by year, it seemed to be in the mind share. WWE seemed to be in the mind share of students. They knew what it was. Some were hardcore fans, most of them not, but everybody, as far as that age demographic, like the early university demographic of Chinese students, they seemed to know what it was. And a lot of them, when I would ask if there was a wrestling show, would you go? And they would often say yes. So that eventually turned into, well, what if I should do this? Because it seemed to me at that time that nobody else was doing it. And while that's not entirely accurate, I would come to learn that there were a few wrestling promotions trying. But really, all in all, on a national scale, there was no real wrestling promotion that people knew about to a large degree.
Yeah, we've seen the growth of wrestling throughout, like China, Malaysia, Singapore, Hong Kong, over the past few years. So, what was it like when you were first starting up? One, trying to create the company, but two, also having the talent to be able to run that company. What was the like talent pool like for when you was trying to sort out your first show?
Admittedly, it was a shallow talent pool, but it was still a very passionate talent pool with what I had to work with. There were efforts before me to bring wrestling into China. In fact, one of those were one of the guys that you spoke with before, Ho Ho Lun. He had been trying his best to kind of get wrestling in China for a while. And through Ho Ho Lun, actually, and he introduced me to another wrestler in China. His name is The Slam. I don't know if he talked to you about him,
No, you
but
didn't.
The Slam is one of the first pro wrestlers in China to actually leave China to go learn wrestling. So he found a wrestling school in Korea, funnily enough, and he learned. I guess he learned for a few months. He came back to China and he opened a wrestling school, and he actually ended up training about a dozen guys. So by the time I got myself involved in the wrestling scene in China, you had to only find two people to work with, Ho Ho Lun and The Slam, using
Yeah.
Ho Ho's Hong Kong wrestlers and The Slam's Chinese wrestlers that he had already trained, and then also being reached out to by promoting on Reddit. Hey, are there any wrestlers in China? Any English teachers or other foreign workers that had worked as professional wrestlers before? And actually, I got a lot of people reached out to me. You'd be surprised about the amount of wrestlers that actually turned English teachers in China. So there was a talent pool to work with, even in our initial shows.
And it's interesting you should say that. I'd been looking at teaching English in China. I think it had been about 4 years ago. I just got back from working in Tanzania and Africa for a few months, and I thought, right, what next? And I ended up settling down, I guess, over here and finding a decent paying job that stopped me from going to China. But it's interesting to see how you use Reddit as a forum of contacting and building that networking. I know in China there's we've spoken about it, and me and Ho Ho Lun did as well, the restrictions on certain media platforms. Does that make it difficult for you to reach out to talent or to try and give yourself more of a global branding?
We do have to. I mean, what's interesting about MKW is that we do have like two different marketing teams. So we have one team that works within the Great Firewall of China. And then we also have another team that works outside of the Great Firewall of China. So it is different in the fact that you do have to think about this content should be curated for inside China, and maybe this content should be curated for outside China. So you do have to look at a different method for promoting within and promoting outside. As far as reaching out, I mean, you have to have a VPN if you've got to reach out. So through those methods, we can contact foreign wrestlers and bring foreign wrestlers to China. Without Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, yeah, it would be difficult. So we have to find whatever software we can to do international business, which is not uncommon in China. A lot of Chinese companies who do international business, they have to use special softwares to communicate with their foreign department.
Yeah, it's really interesting that that's the way that things are. Like, it's completely different to, I guess, like us Western, like in America or here in the UK. It's such a different way of working out there. So going back to like just starting up the company, was there any like hesitation from others? Like, here you are, American born, you're living in China now, and you're wanting to create a company. Did you get any backlash from some people that was already trying to establish wrestling promotions?
By and large, I would say it was quite positive, because not to take away from the Slam or even Ho Ho Lun's attempts in working in China, but at that point, there was wrestling in China was so fringe and so, oh my gosh, there were a few attempts at wrestling promotions in China that just, I would say, failed so miserably.
Yeah.
That I think people were just open-minded, whether it was me, an American, or anybody. People are quite open-minded to a new promotion coming about in China, especially in 2015 when I first came about, because it just didn't have a good reputation. And the people who tried before me, they had largely stopped because it just didn't work out. So there wasn't as much pushback actually as I thought there would be. I thought I would be entering into like this territory wars or whatever, but unfortunately, actually, there isn't a territory war because there's not much of a wrestling business. So there's not much to war about.
Yeah. So what was it like promoting your first show then? I think if like some of the research is right, you was doing work with the Slam, with CWE when you first started. What was all that like? Like, what was your first when you first promoted the show? What was it like? The audience, your experiences.
Well, the first shows we promoted with we used a lot of the Slam's resources because he had a ring, and we used the space that he had the ring in, and how actually very thankful for the amount of help he gave me in the early stages of MKW. Now, as far as the audience was, we actually had we had free shows. So we weren't looking for big ticket sales. We were looking for people to just get their eyes on it. We cared a lot more about the video and the production, although the production was still quite low to what we have now. But at that time, we just wanted people to be in front of the ring. But I did quickly learn that actually Chinese fans, they're still in the, I guess you could say, the learning stage of pro wrestling, especially the ones who don't really have a history of being in the WWE fans or watching wrestling. Their relationship with watching a wrestling match doesn't garner the same reaction as American or even Japanese, which Japanese are known to be, they say, oh, they're very polite, they're very quiet, but they know what's going on. In China, they're very quiet, but they don't know what's going on. So it really was a learning experience about how to better book and produce these matches to make sure that they work for a Chinese audience.
Okay. So what was it like when MKW started growing and you're getting more and more fans that are becoming MKW fans, making them get into shows like maybe their priority? Like, what's the growth been like for you?
The last few years in particular, I would say since maybe around late 2017, we've been able to work with really wonderful people who really believe in our product and believe in professional wrestling and its growth here in China. And we have had, like you said, MKW fans. These aren't just wrestling fans. These are like pure MKW fans, and it's been a real it's been a real pleasure for me as a promoter, for our wrestlers, to have people who actually actively are fans and follow our product, respect it to a point where they know that wrestling in China is still, even with MKW is growing as much as it has, you know, we still have to go with the growing, we still have to move along at the same growing pains that any wrestling industry has to go through, especially one that's as underdeveloped as the Chinese one. And our fans have been so understanding, and I'm really grateful for them. So it's really night and day to what MKW used to be like in the early days. Sometimes I think about taking off some of the earlier videos of our product, but I keep them there on YouTube and other things just so people can see the growth and see how much better and more mature the wrestlers and the fans and the overall product has gotten.
No, 100%. Keeping the old content, it does show like a contrast, and even to the fans or even to yourself, just to appreciate you've gone from one level of the spectrum, and just to see that organic growth into what MKW is becoming, where in the Asian wrestling scene, it is becoming a respected promotion. What's the talent pool like now then? Like, where do you look for your homegrown talent?
We actively more than ever, we actively look for building up wrestlers that are here in China.
Yeah.
And of course, that does include Chinese wrestlers, but there's also a number of foreign wrestlers that do live here in China, and we look to establishing them as well, especially if their plans are to be here long term in China. Now, we do also look towards the Southeast Asian wrestling scene, and if you look at our show history, our cards, we do obviously grab from those talent pools, because we kind of look at it that we're all in the same pool together. Actually, it's not just China that has such an underdeveloped wrestling scene. It's not just mainland China. It would be also Hong Kong or Philippines or Singapore and Malaysia. You know, when we promoters get together and we talk about our struggles, it's all the same thing. It always comes back down to the same thing. There's not enough wrestling fans in this country. It always comes down to not enough people know what the WWE is. So because we're all in this together, we've actually had like a very interconnected relationship, because we're all promoters, not just growing our company, we're trying to grow a whole industry within our respective countries that we reside in. So yeah, that's very interesting when you think about it like that. That this is cross the border mentalities. These are people from different countries, but we all think a lot alike.
Yeah, it's something that I really like seeing. I mentioned it in the interview that I did with Shukat from Malaysia Pro Wrestling. We discussed the fact that it's so apparent that you guys are all trying to help each other. You're all trying to work together, and you see some of that in the UK, but then you see somewhere it's like quite competitive between some companies. But like you said, you've got people from mainland China, Hong Kong, the Philippines, Vietnam, Malaysia, Singapore, all trying to come together to try and build a better wrestling scene. And I think that's fantastic, to be honest. The fact that people aren't wanting to monopolize and take over all of it. They know, right, if we build these small parts together, it's going to benefit all of us.
Absolutely. And if you look at the history of MKW, we have worked. We've had cooperative shows with promotions in South Korea, Nepal, Thailand, Vietnam, and we were actually planning this really big show in Malaysia in June. I think it was supposed to be on June 7th, 2020, before the pandemic. We were looking, me and Shao Kai, we were going to promote a pretty big event in Kuala Lumpur. That was something that we were definitely going to continue in 2020. That's what we're looking to do.
Yeah, I think that was one of the first times I reached out to you guys was you tweeted about the disappointment that you're supposed to be getting together, working together, and that hasn't come about. And do you think it's good for your talent as well? Like, especially those that have found their feet in China and may not have been to these other countries. Do you think it's important to be taking them to, for example, Malaysia to work in front of a different audience of a different nationality?
Absolutely. And that also, that international experience that wrestlers get when they get to work in front of another country, in another country, in front of a foreign crowd, and maybe where the dynamics aren't the same as they are in their home country, is very important, I think, to develop an overall wrestler or character. I think that goes a long way towards being able to build a very talented and internationally experienced wrestler who I think matures them in a way that's very quickly. That especially when a lot of wrestlers in America or I would say in more established wrestling scenes like in the UK, I would say that a lot of wrestlers are very content to be like, king of their town, you know what I mean? Or, king or queen of their town, or as we kind of call them, a weekend warriors, right? On the weekend, they're the warrior in their town. So, but that can sometimes cause that can kind of, in my opinion, it kind of minimizes what the bigger picture for them. If they're always in that bubble. So if a wrestler can leave that and we put them immediately in a new crowd, everything changes very quickly for them. And I think they learn in a way that I think even a producer or wrestling agent couldn't teach them, because it is a new country, it is a new crowd, and it's not only just working the show, it's getting there. It's the international experience of getting off the plane and learning a little bit of the language, a little bit of the culture, and being so overwhelmed and culture shocked, but still being able to work in a wrestling match and still be their character and turn themselves up 110%. I think that's really important. I think that's one of the reasons why MKW has been able to develop such an interesting talent pool.
No, 100%. And you mentioned developing the talent pool. Have you established your own academy, like your own training school yet, or is that something that you've got planned on in the future?
Yeah, we definitely have had a wrestling school. We have Zombie Dragon, who actually brought from America to China specifically to be the head trainer at the school.
Wow.
So he's been working here in China as a wrestling trainer for about 2 years now. And that's why we brought him here. We brought him here because that's how dedicated we were to, and we still are, to developing pro wrestling in China, because he's a very talented wrestler. He had developed many successful wrestling characters in the southern United States, and we thought he was a perfect fit here in China. So yeah, we have had a wrestling school. And speaking of that, actually, Of course, the wrestling school did close temporarily during the pandemic, but this week was the first time we were able to open classes in 2020. So it was this was a very important week for us because we have come back to wrestling training after 6 months hiatus due to the COVID-19 pandemic. So I'm glad you asked about the academy. Yeah, we opened this week finally.
No, that's great to see that you're opening after such a long period of time. This pandemic hasn't been great for any company, and I'm hoping, like yourselves, you're going back. We've seen it with New Japan. They're about to do the New Japan Cup with a live audience as well. So hopefully we are getting into that the clear blue skies, shall we say, of post-COVID doing the wrestling, and hopefully it'll show that it'll improve it all for you. People's hunger will be back because they might missed it. Those carrying any little injuries to being able to use this time as healing. So you mentioned Zombie Dragon. He's your current MKW World Champion. Like, for those at home, like, visually, Zombie Dragon looks absolutely fantastic. But try and explain the persona behind Zombie Dragon and his ability in the ring and why people should check him out.
Sure. Describing Zombie Dragon, I think, would be kind of trying to describe what chaotic evil is. And what's interesting about something that's chaotic evil is it doesn't necessarily have to be bad. That's why Zombie Dragon is actually a huge fan favorite in China. You would think someone who is this evil entity would be hated, but actually he's able to connect with people while still being scary, connect with people while still being ugly and gross and maybe even cruel. So there's a certain connection that I think Chinese fans and fans around the world have with Zombie Dragon in a way where like they connect to the Joker or some other kind of dark force. And as far as his wrestling, he's the MKW trainer, like I said, and he has such an incredible array of moves. The way he moves his body is so different from most wrestlers. In fact, a lot of wrestlers, they can kind of define themselves by their wrestling maneuvers. But actually, Zombie Dragon can make a wrestling match just by the way he moves around in the ring. Serpent. It's really amazing to see. So if people want to watch more about Zombie Dragon, you're kind of going to go into this whole world of chaotic evil, but at the same time, morally right. It's strange. It's such an incredible character, and I hope if the wrestling industry is fair, I hope that more people and more eyes of chaotic, same time, if the wrestling industry is fair, eyes will be on Zombie.
Yeah, 100%. One person that has been, I believe, passing on a lot of his experience to yourself and other companies with Ho Ho Lun. From his time in WWE and then coming back to the industry, wrestling in China and Southeast Asia, how's Ho Ho helped you develop MKW in the past couple of years since his departure from WWE?
Well, since he's come back from WWE, every time we bring Ho Ho Lun, of course, we want to use him not only to be on the show and as a worker, but we always insist that he also does seminars. And actually, he does his seminars all over Asia. So when we bring him in, I say, do you have time to do a seminar before the show or the night before? Cool. Everybody does the same thing in Asia. and obviously they keep doing it because he does really great seminars for wrestlers, for not only for the trainees, but everybody takes part in them, because there is a lot to learn from Ho Ho Lun. And not only from his time in the WWE, but also the fact that he has been involved in wrestling probably longer than, I guess longer than all of us. So in China, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
Not longer necessarily than every worker who's come to China, but longer than every Chinese wrestler.
Yeah.
For sure. So there's just so much to learn from him, and he's also has so much experience in working in Japan recently in Dragon Gate.
Yeah.
And he also helps to set up and promote the Dragon Gate Hong Kong shows. I think last year or 2 years ago, Dragon Gate started touring Hong Kong. So, and they were definitely using the bulk of the resources were from Ho Ho.
Yeah, that was something we touched up on. So for any of you listening or watching and you wanting to know a little bit more of that and you've not already, make sure you check out my interview with Ho Ho Lun, where we talk about his wrestling experience in Hong Kong, his time with Dragon Gate and helping to bridge that Dragon Gate exposure in Hong Kong. But I want to go to somebody else that's just become part of the MKW roster and left WWE in Zeta Zhang. Like, how's she been, like, being able to use her on the shows? And it's another name people are familiar with WWE. She's been at MLW. What's her importance with your company, would you say?
She's very important, as far as women's wrestling in China. I don't know what it is about China and mainland China and Hong Kong or even Taiwan, where there are no female wrestlers there. But yet in the Philippines and Malaysia and in even Nepal, there are Singapore. There are so many, not so many, but they have a female wrestling roster. And thankfully, Zeta Zhang, she has her roots are quite. She doesn't go too far from her roots because her family lives in Taiwan. Her dad is from Shanghai, so she's able to come back to China quite a bit. And she is an awesome person to work with. Actually, she has been so helpful and done so much. Done so much for, I think, to building up the MKW brand in the last few years. I really feel that any match that she's on, she really gives her 100% effort no matter what. Even if she's coming literally just came on like a 30-hour flight and has to wrestle 6 hours later. She's so professional and so great to work with. And there is that link, that WWE link. There is that MLW link, And to our fans, there are not a lot of female wrestlers that we can work with here in China, but I do feel that the next generation of female wrestlers in China, now of course Chinese fans, they can see it Xiali and Zeta Zhang, but I do think that since Zeta Zhang, she's been able to wrestle in China, I think she's been able to touch and inspire more female wrestling fans in China, and hopefully that will result in more in a future women's roster in China, homegrown.
Yeah, I think it is something important to try and to build that up, and it's great to see that you feel like Zeda can be part of that. What's the best bit of advice she's given you since getting on board?
Well, actually, I have spent a lot of time with Zeta, and I do ask her a lot, or I would ask her a lot, especially when she just left the WWE, what her experience was like there in NXT. And there are some things that she's been able to say, you know what, they do it this way, and maybe we could do it this way too.
Yeah.
And she's not shy to share some of those things, that because she has had experience working in a lot of large promotions, especially even after, she actually went to work for OWE as well, and she's really went all over the world wrestling. And when I do ask her quite candidly, to be frank with me and give me any kind of advice that she has seen in other wrestling promotions around the world. So she's not afraid to let her to share what could be better in MKW and something that we could apply. And I think in the last 2 years there's been a progress going up since she started working for us in 2018.
Good. That's great to see. So, with the pandemic going down, what are your goals for MKW?
The goal right now, the short-term goal was to get our training back, which I would say so far has been successful. And the next part is to promote the training school to more people, to build up another class. After that, it's difficult to make a goal, because actually a virus doesn't care about your goals.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, it's really up to how the virus is dealt with. And unfortunately, that's bigger. That's more than I can deal with. I think that's more than the wrestling industry can deal with.
Yeah.
It's up to a very, what I hope are very qualified group of people to help us get through this terrible pandemic. If I could make a goal that seems realistic in the situation that we're in right now in China, I would say we could start possibly running smaller shows without a paid audience, but focusing on the streaming services that we have here in China, in the similar way that AEW and WWE has been running shows with no audience, but maybe using the staff around the ring, right? They've been doing with the staff around the ring, kind of adding some pizzazz to the match. We might be able to do something like that in the near future. But really, like I said, it's up to the virus.
Yeah. No, fingers crossed that it is something you're able to do in the future. And again, it's great that the training is going to be starting. So we mentioned Zombie Dragon, but who else would you recommend people check out?
Well, we have, I would say right now, we've been able to develop we have a core roster. And every show we do bring some extra talents from Japan. Sometimes we bring we have a close relationship with Championship Wrestling from Hollywood. But I would say our core roster, which consists of about 12, 13 guys, which would be like Zombie Dragon, Michael Sue, Cam Ferguson, Black Mamba, Bamboo Crusher. That's the 13 core roster we've built in the last few years. And if you look at our shows, you'll see that, we have a lot of names come in. We do have names that come to MKW, but they work with our core dozen or so guys. Yeah. And I think that those dozen or so guys, you can see their development so clearly that I think it's fascinating to watch them grow, especially in a country where there actually isn't, unfortunately, enough wrestling shows, which forces them to grow quickly, to have to grow quicker, and have to learn at a speed rate that might be even quicker than countries where there's wrestling is more readily available. So if you want to check out MKW's wrestlers, of course, Zombie Dragon, he's our trainer. He's the MKW World Champion. But also see the core roster of MKW wrestlers, which consists of a very passionate Chinese and foreign wrestling roster.
You mentioned Championship Wrestling from Hollywood, and obviously David Marquez. Like, how did that relationship come about?
David Marquez is someone that obviously a lot of people respect in the industry. And how did that relationship, how did our partnership come about? Well, that came from the fact that David Marquez is interested in doing business in China. In fact, he has done business in China. Yep. In 2018, he promoted a show in Wenzhou, China, which was headlined by Nick Aldis and Colt Cabana. And they brought the whole, I think it was 10 pounds of gold, the whole 10 pounds of gold team. But actually, I mean, I don't know if there's if this gave me any heat with NWA, but that wasn't an NWA show. That was a David Marquez show.
I think that's how it
put that together.
Yeah, I think that's how it was booked as well. I think it was acknowledged that it was Championship Wrestling at the time.
Oh, okay. So I don't know. I mean, when I saw a little bit of ads, it's made it seem like it was an NWA show. But yeah, David Marquez was able to put together this really cool show, and after that show happened, he was looking forward to coming back to China, but actually that hasn't worked out for one reason or another, and that's where we started talking. Obviously, he knew that from others that I was doing business in China. I'm also American, so we have that link right there. But that's kind of how it built up. He ended up promoting a show in China, and it wasn't meant to be a promotion. It was literally just meant to be a show, just a show in an arena, and he got a great deal out of it. And because he's interested in the Chinese wrestling market, naturally that would lead him to us speaking. Now, since we spoke, we have developed a really great relationship, which has led to MKW and Championship Wrestling from Hollywood and Arizona working together as far as bringing talents from CWFH to China to work for Peter Avalon, the Rockness Monsters, Dickie Mayer, and we were in 2020. We were planning on promoting a show together between MKW and CWFH at the end of this year, which I don't think is going to happen anymore. Yeah, we have a great relationship with David Marquez, and he'll actually be on our podcast as well. I don't know if it's kosher to plug another podcast on your podcast.
Do it. Yep. No, plug it away.
Yeah, sure. We'll have David Marquez. Yeah, we'll have David Marquez on the Chinese Wrestling Sit Down on Facebook Live coming on June 15th, 10:30 a.m. Beijing time. So if you guys want to speak with David Marquez, he's a cool guy. He's an interesting guy. He's not just wrestling. He's a showbiz guy, So really great personality. So I'm glad you asked about David Marquez.
No, so for those of you that are interested, I believe when this is dropped, that would have already happened. So make sure you head over to the Facebook just to watch it back as well. Something I'm really excited with, again, with this series, it's all about trying to put more eyes onto the wrestling scene in China, Hong Kong, and Southeast Asia. And it's good to see that David Marquez is wanting to do that as well. So hopefully in 2021, we do get your show in Malaysia with Shukat. We do get that show with Championship Wrestling from Hollywood. So if you had your choice, Zombie Dragon, if you was allowed to put him against any of the CWFH guys, who do you want him in that match with?
Well, I would say Peter Avalon, but I think his AEW deal might confuse some people. So
Yeah.
I'm going to use another guy, actually. From what I've seen in Championship Wrestling from Hollywood, I'm a big fan of Gentleman Jarvis. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that talent, but he's fantastic. And I really love. I think that would be a really great contrast of super, maniacal evil and Gentleman Jarvis, who is just the sweetest man in the world. I think that would be an excellent match.
No, brilliant. So where can people find like your social medias if they're wanting to watch any of your shows, especially for like the Western audience in America, Australia, England? Where can they find your products?
Sure. If you want to learn more about MKW, you should go to middlekingdomwrestling.com. If you want to go directly to our social media accounts, there's Twitter, which is MKW Wrestling. There's Instagram, MKW China. There's Facebook, MKW China. And if you're interested in following myself, I'm Adrian Gomez MKW on Twitter and Adrian MKW on Instagram. But I hope you guys can, the fans that are listening to this, know that by supporting MKW, you're also supporting the development of wrestling worldwide, because we work very closely and trying to prop up together, while others help us prop up a wrestling industry in East and Southeast Asia, and even Western Asia, like Nepal or maybe India in the future. So what I like to tell fans is you're supporting wrestling worldwide by supporting MKW. And I think that's what most wrestling fans want. They want more wrestling fans. They want more wrestling. So if you have more, if you imagine China, which has over 1 billion fans, if we can develop that, I think that's good for everybody.
100%. So if they're not familiar with wrestling in China, what can they expect if they check out MKW?
Pro wrestling with Chinese characteristics. So the Chinese party, they say that one of the unique things about their form of communism is it's communism with Chinese characteristics. Well, we are professional wrestling with Chinese characteristics. What does that mean exactly? Well, you might have to learn a little bit about Chinese culture to maybe get some of the inside jokes, or you might see some humor that probably, or you might see some aspects of Chinese culture in our wrestling. But also, we try to have a very international style of wrestling, because it's not only Chinese wrestlers on our roster, but like you said, we also bring a lot of other wrestlers from different cultures. So you are going to really see a variety show at an MKW show. True, in a sense, a variety show.
Brilliant. So make sure you give them a follow. Make sure you check out the YouTube channels and support where you can. And just be open to learning about a new wrestling scene. This is why I'm really enjoying this series, delving into all the different scenes in China, Hong Kong, throughout Southeast Asia. So make sure you give them a follow. Check the shows out on YouTube. Again, Google Zombie Dragon, because his visuals are fantastic, looks an absolute star. And when that person is representing the company, then surely you want to check that out. So, yeah, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Make sure you check out my previous interviews with Shukat from Malaysian Pro Wrestling, with Ho Ho Lun, the founder of Hong Kong Pro Wrestling Federation and Dragon Gate Wrestler, and the statement Andrew Tang from Singapore Pro Wrestling. You can check those out on YouTube. Thank you for watching.
Thank you for listening. Make sure you hit subscribe.
Friday morning, can't control it. Fired up and counting every minute. Hands are shaking, eyes are burning. The time has come, yeah, this is not a warning. The week was just so long, we had to let it go. Our problems disappeared, we're not tied up anymore. The weekend is here. Sunday comes, we are sick and tired.